Rumors are abound that Nintendo is about to revolutionize the future of gaming by introducing VR to the Nintendo Switch.
But Shane, the future's already here. I don't see how you can possibly improve upon perfection.
You can't see anything.
Hot take!
An article written by Emily Rogers at Nintendo World Report is basically talking about something that we mentioned a while back, that there may be a possibility of VR coming to the Nintendo Switch.
Yes, within the article it states that there are multiple sources that are confirming that VR is indeed coming to the Switch in some form or another, and this VR integration with the Switch could be announced as early as 2019. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh.
Now, we had a lot of things to say about why this wouldn't be a good idea, but let's talk about the things that could make this really happen, because look, we're not just talking about hardware, we're also talking about software. We're talking about movements in the game industry towards VR, because it's a very exciting idea for technology.
So there are many reasons why this could be a thing, and in the article Emily Rogers had written about several of those. Nintendo has been dabbling with visual sort of flair for their consoles for a very, 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 very long time.
Virtual Boy.
Virtual Boy, we talk about a lot, but there's also like the integration of 3D with the GameCube, which we've mentioned before as well, putting a screen on your TV for Luigi's Mansion in particular, so you get a 3D effect. It never came out, but the tech was there and reported on. And then you have things like the 3DS, of course, which had the 3D integration.
Sure, and actually all the way back into the days of the Famicom, there was a 3D visor for that, so you could see things in 3D.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
It's not like Nintendo is not wanting to do things like this, or has never done it in the past.
So not only do we have those sort of like footsteps that have been taken by Nintendo in the past, but also, you may remember a few months ago, there were data miners that were looking into the Nintendo Switch firmware, and they said, hey, what's this VR thing over here? Let me check this out. And there was VR integration, I guess in the thinnest sense, in that there was a mode that basically just split the Switch screen into two, which is what you need to have VR.
If you don't know how VR headsets work, basically you have one screen in front of you, and then there's two little lenses. The screen is split, and then the image is kind of warped a little bit, but the way that the lenses are created is they kind of re-bend the image back into your eyes so that you can see things in a stereoscopic view, so you can see depth and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, so not only all of this, but we also had the former president of Nintendo, Tatsumi Kimishima, was just talking about having VR integration with the Switch for a while he was the president before the leadership was passed on. He's like, yeah, no, we're looking into it. It's something that we're really interested in. So Nintendo's been dabbling with VR and visual stuff for a very, very, very long time.
Yes. Now, cool, neat, fine, awesome. There are problems. There are a ton of problems. Now, Adam, you and I have used a massive amount of VR headsets.
Yeah, just recently we've been using a VR headset that we've been a little more positive about, and that is the PSVR, and we've been having some cool moments with that. VR is still not all that great. I mean, most people that have dabbled within VR know that there's still some hiccups here or there. This is the early days of VR, right?
Yeah, it's basically like everyone is on training wheels still, and they don't really know what works. The exciting moments of when they introduced 3D graphics engines for the first time in the video game industry, a whole bunch of people started being like, what do you do with this? And they didn't understand. So you got games like Bubsy 3D and Superman 64, and suddenly these things don't really make a lot of sense. But other game developers out there did figure it out, and they got stuff like that to work. And VR is kind of in the same space.
Right.
But it's a little bit different. When they started to introduce 3D-based graphics engines and 3D-based consoles and stuff like that, the consoles were not prohibitively expensive. They usually came down to a pretty easy-to-consume price. Now, we did have 3D graphics cards on the market and stuff like that, and those were a lot more expensive. But when it came to introducing the Nintendo 64, the PlayStation, even the Super FX chip and stuff like that, it was easy for people to consume that.
Oh, absolutely. It's because you were taking something that people were very much aware of and just putting a slight spin on them, right? Hey, you have a TV. This is a game console. Remember those other game consoles you plugged into your TV? Do it here. But this time, the graphics are going to look slightly different. Where this could be a huge problem is that showcasing visual things, especially in a VR headset, has still been very problematic. It's hard to like show a big audience, this is the experience you're going to have. Mostly all we have are people with headsets on, waggling motion controls, looking kind of ridiculous, while a big screen in the background is assuring you, this is what you're going to see, but not like this. It's going to be like you're there, and it's not very convincing, is it?
Really not.
No.
So, one of the problems that we've had with VR right now is really the idea that the hardware is just kind of all over the place.
Yep.
All the headsets are just kind of strange. At the very beginning, Adam was wearing a headset that's a Pimax headset. That is a 4K headset. We were going to review it when it was sent in, but there were a bunch of problems with it, and it didn't work that well. So I ended up completely passing it by, and it wasn't something that I thought was worthwhile covering. We also took a look at the HTC Vive, the Oculus Rift, and the PlayStation VR is the most prominent thing that we're using a lot more right now.
Yeah. When you're naming off all the different like hardware headsets right now, the grounds for VR already sounds a little bit muddied, and then you take into consideration, speaking of muddy, take into consideration things like the NS glasses, which were recently kickstarted for the Nintendo Switch, which is basically just two plastic windows in a headset that are supposed to give you depth within Switch games. And if anything, this is not helping what could be the future of VR for the Switch.
Wasn't a good idea because it made people think that you could actually do it when you couldn't. So that was a problem. But when it comes to VR headsets, right now, if you look at the video game industry, we have a couple of major players in the scene. We have Microsoft with the Xbox, and they also control Windows. We've got Sony with the PlayStation 4, and we have Nintendo with the 3DS still and the Switch. When it comes to a lot of other companies that are making digital distribution platforms and stuff like that, they traditionally live off of things like Windows or Mac and all that, so there's fractions on that stuff. But when you get into mobile gaming, you've got iOS and you've got Google with Android. Now, when it comes to headsets, Gear VR,
yes,
you've got Daydream, you've got Oculus Go. Vive is going to be introducing a new portable version of HTC Vive, which is not the exact same thing, but it's kind of the same idea. Then you have the standalone HTC Vive. You have the better version of the HTC Vive. You've got
augmented reality as well. Yes,
you've got Windows mixed reality (MR).
Yes.
So just too much.
What was the Magic Leap?
Oh yeah, you got that too.
Yeah,
seriously,
so much.
There are so many headsets on the market, so many different places you can go to for all this stuff, and the thing is, the quality of it is not consistent. From my own personal take on this, the best experience I have had playing VR is HTC Vive. It has been the most consistent. It has been the best when it comes to the way that the hardware performs. However, it's not like you've got Sony or Microsoft making games for that, or even Nintendo. So you have a bunch of games on there that are just being produced, and some are done very well, but you got a lot of stuff there that just doesn't work.
I would say the best supported headset, not necessarily the best hardware, is the PSVR, because we are getting some compelling software on there. But we're still, like you were saying with 3D graphics, we're still in such like the early stages of this technology that, we're getting one or two great games. Astro Bot, I gotta keep mentioning over and over again.
We're going to be doing a much bigger video about this eventually.
That's the sort of proof to me. Okay, yes, no, you can do something that's taken a little bit of the old and adding in the new and putting them together in such a way that it's compelling.
Yes.
Like you should have a headset for this. Is what I'm trying to say.
Pinball FX.
Yeah.
This is a really cool pinball game. Now, traditionally, when you play pinball in the real world, you have a table, you can kind of look around and stuff. It's a very physical experience. But when you go to play it in a video game, you lose out on that stuff. But now with a VR headset, and I've actually been playing Pinball FX, I think 3 or 2 VR on the PlayStation VR, and wow, it's amazing. It's like you're actually there playing it. It really does stand out.
So we're talking about the differences in all of these hardwares, this whole spectrum of like for PCs with really, really expensive gear, and then with the lower end like Gear VR sort of experiences with your phones and stuff. The Switch is a lower resolution than almost everything.
Yeah, so here's where we get into the problems.
It's problematic.
Now, just from a hardware standpoint, and I hate to be the one to say this, I hate to rain on everyone's parade.
You never rain on anyone's parade when we're talking about the Switch, Shane.
If Nintendo takes the Switch, puts it in a dock, and the Switch's screen is used in front of your face, that is going to be the worst VR experience you could possibly ever have. It is a 720 screen, 720p screen being split in half amongst each eye. It will look so terrible. I mean, so terrible that you're probably going to throw up when you use it. I know people are out there thinking, oh, it's not going to be that gross, I'm going to throw up. No, you're going to get VR sickness from having this weird image in front of you.
Because it's not even just the resolution. You have to think about the hertz that are being displayed at the same time, the refresh rate, I should say. So typically with the headsets that we have nowadays, like the PSVR, Oculus, or Vive, we're hitting somewhere between 90 and 120 hertz. It's a refresh rate that's, it's good. It's smooth, right? We're not sure that you can have a good refresh rate with a Switch.
There are some headsets out there that don't use 90 hertz. They go closer to 60. Well, what you're basically saying is an amount of frames that are flashing at your eyes.
That's right.
So I have seen 60 done well. PSVR is the most interesting of all the headsets I've used because it is the bare bones technology to get into it. It's not. It's got a pretty decent screen on it. It's doing a lot of things well, but the technology that functions that thing is not nearly as good as other pieces of tech that are out there. But firmly, I believe that the PlayStation VR made the most sense for what they did, and it's still in my mind. And we'll talk about this another day. Like I said, it is the best VR experience you can get for consumers at the moment. Now, with that being said, what can you do with a Nintendo Switch? You got a built-in battery, you got a nice little amount of power inside there so you can pump out some pretty awesome graphics. What you need to do is put that system in a headset and use a headset that has a different screen built into it.
Okay. Well, so I want to remind folks about something. There was a patent that Nintendo had officially made for a headset that you could lock your Switch into. Now, that didn't have the exact hardware that you're talking about, but maybe that is the first step towards something like this, because what you're talking about sounds like one of the only ways that this might work. I want to put a couple other little bullet points here. We still have to keep in mind that the Switch, as it is right now, it runs incredibly hot. And if you're going to enclose it in something, not a great idea. And it's not the lightest thing in the world. It's not a game breaker by any means.
When it comes to
VR
it's not
headsets, the lightest thing.
Honestly,
you have to go light, man.
You'd have to go light. I don't think the weight is going to affect it that much.
No.
But it's the resolution. If you don't have the right resolution on there, you're going to get what's called the screen door effect. And basically, because the image is being zoomed and magnified on your face, you're going to be able to see every line of pixels.
You're seeing between the pixels. You're seeing between reality. It's very jarring. It pulls you out of the experience.
It totally does. And plus, with the low resolution of the graphics, you're going to have games that just don't look very well. So it's not the best idea in that way. However, the concept of having a fully charged Switch that could run on this thing and then, I don't know, last for 2 hours, hopefully, that's pretty cool. One of the big problems that I have with VR is being tethered with a wire, and it sucks. So you've got Oculus Go that's trying to fix that. You've got the new Vive that's trying to fix that. Gear VR from the get-go had changed that, and of course, Daydream also didn't do that, or fixed it as well. Google VR has their own, situational stuff like that.
Everyone's dealing with it.
Right? So what Nintendo could bring to the table is that, but see, I don't think the VR headset is really the problem. If they put a new screen on there that isn't using the built-in Switch screen, or perhaps a new Switch comes out that has a higher resolution screen and a higher frame rate screen, maybe that could make things better. But what matters to me the most is the games made for the platform, and that's where Nintendo really has the best power out there.
So part of the article that Emily Rogers had written was talking about how some of the first-party titles that are already out are being planned for some sort of VR integration. So we can think of some of those right now. I mean, Mario Odyssey's number one.
That would be amazing, right? I think that would be a fantastic thing to play.
Right.
Smash Brothers, being able to look around in the field as you're
I don't
playing.
think it's necessary.
I want it.
It would be cool. It would be cool for depth. I believe it might be a little more effective in something like Breath of the Wild, being able to look off into the distance to the mountains that you could climb.
So here is another issue too. Movement in VR can be a big problem because
still a big problem because the tech is still so new. No one's figured it out yet. Do you want to teleport? Do you want to get motion sickness? What do you want?
Some people that play first-person games in VR are going to kind of get a little sick as they're moving into hallways and stuff like that. It's one of the reasons why you see a lot of people not really falling in love with VR, because they physically feel uncomfortable while using it. So some of the best experiences find some kind of mixture. A HUD experience, for instance, if they put a HUD around you, then suddenly you don't get so sick. I was playing Wipeout Vr VR. And Wipeout has this really smart idea where the game starts up and you can see all around you. But as soon as you start racing, a shield comes over top of you and it makes you focus directly on what's in front. And that way it kind of it helps limit the scope of what you're seeing, and it makes you feel a bit better.
So far, VR is about tricking you. That's what everyone's trying to do, to trick you into not getting sick. There are other implementations of developers have made it so that there's focusing things that go on, fading in and fading out for movement. There's so many tricks. Eventually something will stick. We just haven't gotten to it yet. And here's the thing.
And there's homemade remedies too. You can chew. I tried this once, and okay, this is the funniest thing.
I suggested just punching Shane in the gut while he was playing VR.
Sure, why not?
It was a lot of fun for me. Shane didn't seem to enjoy it.
I had a lot of friends that are in VR. They told me, get inebriated, and then you're gonna be able to play anything. It's yeah, I think you're gonna get way more motion sickness with that. But the thing everyone told me to do was chew on candied ginger while you're playing a game, and you won't get motion sickness.
Imagine if you got sick. You would hate ginger forever.
So that's what happened.
Every time you play VR, you taste ginger.
That's what happened. I actually got motion sick, and then I was like, okay, now I got motion sick, and now I'm tasting ginger.
Yeah.
It was this horrible experience all around.
Yeah.
So it's there are homemade remedies. Some of that stuff does work for people. The ginger thing is something that does happen. You could even take some medication to make you feel that way. But games shouldn't require that. So making the games designed in a way that makes it work for people, that's really the key to making this stuff a success.
Whenever I think of Nintendo, and I think of their hardware as a whole, that's really impressive, stuff that just grabs people I gotta play it. Usually they're at the forefront of a tech that not a lot of people have their eyes on.
Sure.
And I feel like VR is the first time that they'll have to sort of catch up. Because when it comes, look at their history, right? When it comes to things like the Wii, okay, motion controls existed, motion existed for a long time, but Nintendo popularized it, right?
Yeah.
Think about glassesless 3D with the 3DS. Nintendo did the same. And with both of those systems, you couldn't opt out. You bought a Wii, you had motion controls. You buy a 3DS, the 3D's there. Whether or not you use it is up to you. With this VR headset, it's a peripheral. It's a separate thing. And we talk about segmenting audiences a lot. So not only does Nintendo have to catch up to where VR is across the board right now, they have to take all those other things into consideration as well.
Yeah.
It seems like a weird space for Nintendo to be in, because they're not often those people.
Because one of the biggest problems is it's not that Nintendo doesn't use new advanced technology or finds exciting things that other people aren't doing, because they have done that.
Yeah.
The Nintendo 64 was a great example of using a brand new chip to get this amazing 3D graphics out of a system that no one else is using.
We can talk about the controller there as well. They kind of broke ground with the original N64 controller also.
So it's not like they're unknown to this world.
Yes.
However, when it comes to VR, they are clearly unless they've been working on stuff in secret, there is a lot there that other people have figured out that maybe Nintendo hasn't understood yet. For instance, my initial thought was, if Nintendo were to make a VR headset, what material would they use? Probably cardboard. I was thinking about that, but I was like, but who did cardboard already? Google. They've already made that. So all the things that they could have done to possibly make it cheaper and easier for the consumer to understand, they have been achieved by other companies. It's the software that gets missed out every single time.
Yeah, it's the software that's the most important. And again, just talking about Nintendo's sort of history with hardware and stuff, when this VR thing comes out, if it does come out, I hope it is that leaps and bounds sort of jump where people were like, oh my gosh, this is new, like the Wii motion controller or the 3D integration and stuff. Technology, that's been around, but Nintendo makes it so that a huge audience understands it and wants to go out and get it immediately. It's important. You need the traction there. So far, right now, VR it's like an enthusiast tech sort of thing. PlayStation has made a platform that's the closest to a large audience, but we're seeing, a muddied tech landscape as far as VR is concerned.
How I see this kind of progressing in the future is essentially in this way. I firmly believe that in the next generation, you're going to see a huge push from Sony to integrate the VR technologies into their system. The PlayStation 4 launched, and then the VR headset came out afterwards, right? I don't think these things were made in tandem. Obviously, from an engineering standpoint, there was ideas there, but when you get a PlayStation VR headset, you have to get a box on top of it.
The breakout box.
The breakout box, right? I think in the future, with the next PlayStation console, the PlayStation 5, you're going to see an integration of that tech. So all you have to do is get the headset and get the console, and you're good to go, and you don't have to worry about additional pieces or anything like that. I believe that maybe they'll improve the wands, because it's weird.
There have been patents for new controllers as well.
So things are going to get better for them. I think if Microsoft really, really wants to, they have mixed reality. That's their own thing. And mixed reality does positional tracking, I would say, pretty amazing. Microsoft actually invited me to their offices to try mixed reality in a space. And when they got me to try out mixed reality, they let me try it out in an open window with like a bright room and everything, and I was like, oh, this is not going to work.
Right.
Like, there's a giant window here.
Yeah.
I know how VR has worked in the past, and tracking you in weird spaces never works, and this is like cameras focusing on you, but it was amazing. It worked very well, and my experience with it was so close to HTC Vive that I was shocked, because it didn't have lighthouses or sensors all over you. So if Microsoft were to introduce that onto the Xbox or the next generation of Xbox, suddenly they figured out something that Sony couldn't do with their technology. Big changes. And they've got the power to run that stuff.
Power is very important.
But when it comes to the to Switch, this is a very different idea. Even if Nintendo were to introduce the best gaming abilities possible in the best games, and I have no doubt in my mind that they could do something like that, the problem exists with the hardware limitations and essentially making sure people don't throw up while they're playing it. Because if you've got a bunch of kids playing it and it looks all weird and stuff, you don't want the Switch to be the system that makes... Like, do you remember when the Virtual Boy came out and everyone said they got headaches all the time?
Yes, I do.
Do you want that to happen with the Switch?
Yeah, I know. People's experiences with VR vary extremely. Do you want to hear about my little tinfoil hat talk about this whole situation?
Sure.
So yeah, you were just saying the Switch is underpowered. We need it to be beefed up. Okay, so here's the thing. PlayStation. They had the PS4, the PS3, and then the PS4. They had a little handheld that came out just before the PS4. It's called the Vita. The Vita was not supported well.
Yes.
One of my thoughts on that, because I'd read up that a lot of the developers that were working on the Vita were tossed to another project to work on. This was called Project Morpheus, that later became the PSVR. Nintendo has the Switch. Oh, wait a minute. They had a handheld console as well. Shane, are there a lot of games coming out for the handheld console in the next year? No, because there's going to be a dedicated VR headset, just like Sony did. Nintendo is quietly gathering a team to work on. No, it's very likely not going to happen. But if it did happen, that would be more convincing to me that this virtual reality thing could work, because no, it's its own thing. It's its own console. When you buy it, you get everything that's necessary. It's powerful. The Switch isn't powerful enough. This screen is glorious.
You know what? I'm going to have to say that's probably the right way to go about it.
It may not be what's going to happen, but in my mind, that's one of the ways that Nintendo could make virtual reality work. If it's its own dedicated project, the 3DS isn't a thing anymore. Okay. We have the Switch, it's handheld, it's nomadic.
Okay, I think that's a very smart idea. Here's the reason why I think so too. This is actually really good. Idea. When you think about this in the way that Nintendo could be rolling this out.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just say that you're using the exact same hardware processor, all that fun stuff that you have in the Switch. Some changes. Suddenly, you're not bound by the limitations of the screen. What you're basically doing is taking what's in the Switch and putting it in a headset, but you're just giving a better screen.
Pumping it up.
You know, doing that kind of stuff. Use the same kind of cartridges so the games are interchangeable, that kind of stuff, so people could choose to play Switch games.
Yeah, and if the Switch games don't have the integration of VR, it can be the big TV mode that we've seen with other VR headsets, right? Oh, you can play your Switch games, but they're huge and they look glorious in front of you.
Okay, I could see that happening. I think that is a much more plausible position than taking the Switch as it stands now and sticking it in something. Because if you think about that... Tip in
my hat, man.
Yeah.
The
cost of that would not make sense, because you wouldn't be... I think there'd be a cost association with that. You want the VR headset to be its own unique experience, and you don't want people to be confused. And
we don't want to separate the markets in any way. We were talking about how horrible it could be even with just a Switch Pro. Imagine a VR headset that's further segmenting the market. It would be insane.
Yeah, I think it would be. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's a way for them to actually go about that. And like I said, it's the next generation, not so much right now, that Nintendo needs to fight. right? If Nintendo were to release something now to kind of combat the next group of consoles,
yes,
that would make a lot of sense, but they do have to worry about that because, look, regardless of how you feel about VR at home or how anyone feels about VR, the other companies out there are actively going forward. And if for whatever reason it becomes a thing where people prefer VR to regular 2D based gaming off of the TV in the future, which may or may not happen, it will get to a point where we're going to repeat what happened with the Wii early on, where everyone was moving to high definition and Nintendo was stuck in standard definition land for the longest time.
Right.
And eventually, when we got HD with the Wii U, it was already a bit too late. So there are things here that make a lot of sense, but I firmly believe that Nintendo is going to dabble somewhat in VR somehow.
Yes,
we just don't know how it's going to happen.
We're just getting too many reports and seeing too many patents about this. It's going to pop up somewhere. I just hope that it's the hardware that we're hoping for.
So, folks, what do you think? Do you think that Nintendo is going to introduce a VR headset that's standalone, like Adam said, or one that bundles with the Switch, or maybe one that you just put the Switch together in?
Like everything is pointing to. I gotta say, my prediction is way out there. But
I like your prediction more. It makes more sense.
Anyway, what do you guys think?
Yeah. Do you think it's going to be a success? Do you think it's not? Do you believe it should happen at all? Let us know what you think.